So thanks for asking us to show some of the work we've been doing. Myself and Radek are from the Virtual Engineering Centre at the University of Liverpool. So today we're going to be presenting some of the work we've been doing around storytelling through generative AI powered avatars. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about Mary Seacole. Next slide, please, Radek. So as I said, we're from the Virtual Engineering Centre, so we're a multidisciplinary team, and we work across research and also commercial activities. So we work in all the areas below. Next slide, please, Radek. So a little bit about Mary. Mary Seacole was a Jamaican Scottish nurse, and she was born in the 19th century. She's known for her work during the Crimean War, so working with sick and wounded soldiers. What we wanted to do is create a virtual avatar representation of her, working with the Mary Seacole Society. And the avatar's been showcased during Black History Month for a fundraiser for creating a statue of Mary at St. George's Hall. So I don't know whether the audio is coming through for this, but what we have is here, we have a video of Mary. You can effectively ask live questions and then Mary will answer, and we can ask Mary questions in multiple different languages. I'll hand over to Radek so that you can run through some of the technical aspects of Mary and how we've actually created her.
So before we get to the two technical things, let's look a bit at the visualization and how exactly we went about making Mary look the way she does. So the main technology behind her appearance are metahumans, which are high-fidelity virtual characters which are used with Unreal Engine. So they can be created from someone. So for example, here we can see an example of myself. This is a direct scan of my face. And you can do that, or you can also make them from scratch. Then you can also do it with motion capture. You can capture the face directly for facial animations, or generate them using various types of AI for that. And obviously, Unreal Engine is a game engine, primarily, which means that it has quite a bit of potential when it comes to visualization, all sorts of different things. So basically, the fact that we are working on top of this allows us to also build up our other projects. For example, here we can see Meta Liverpool, which is a city-wild sort of clone of Liverpool. So how exactly did we go about creating Mary? It all started with a single photo, and this isn't quite sufficient for scanning. However, we used the character creator 4 to then create a simplified mesh of the face. From then on, we moved on to a metahuman, and then added some historically appropriate accessories that were also based on the existing photos as well as sketches of Mary Seacole. And this is the final result, just a nice up-close sort of a shot at how she ended up looking like. The hairstyle was also a pretty major part of it. We were working with the Mary Seacole Society quite closely. And moving on to the actual technical bits. By technical bits, I mean the AI and how exactly is it used in case of this particular project. We used GPT-4o for the text responses, 11 Labs for generating the voice, which has been recreated, trying to be as close as accurate to the historical sources, but of course, it's not something that we exactly have that many recordings of, especially from over 100 years ago. And then audio to face was used for animating the voice and the character. So obviously one of the main issues when it comes to trying to use LLMs for any more serious tasks has been mentioned. Often the results, the responses need to be verified. And this is mainly due to the hallucinations, as there's a lot of information going onto the large language model. You essentially end up with a lot of things that simply aren't true. And of course, this was even more prominent in older models back when we were using GPT 3.5. So Mary wasn't really sure about her family members, or she was admitting to traveling to countries that she has never actually visited in her life. So one way to go around that, which of course isn't a perfect solution, but it is a solution, is adding additional context to a prompt that can be taken directly from verified sources, which means that we can essentially work around the token limit to embed some additional information. And this has been greatly improved with the newer models. For example, with 3.5, we had very limited context, but 4.0 allows us to basically embed almost an entire chapter's worth, even more, almost an entire book's worth of information over into the prompt to essentially just help Mary out with using only the information that we want her to be able to use. And the way this works is using a vector database, which compares the similarity of different sort of parts of her life that we have stored. And then whenever there is a need to find some very specific information from a question, for example, tell me about your father, we will get a number of results. For example, here we can see that the primary one that will be queried is family. However, also, since it can also closely relate to her sense of nationality as well as her childhood, we will see that the other context will also be added, although not to that extent as the primary one. So obviously the relevant information will be used. And here I'll hand it back to Simon for the ethical aspects.
Thanks, Radek. So when you're creating an AI-driven digital human of someone from the past, you've obviously got to start thinking about ethical implications of that. So in our case, we work with the Mary Seacole Society, but I think there's a lot of research being done now looking into things like the ethics of whether you should be doing these, creating these kind of characters. But I think in our case, we've tried to work with the Mary Seacole Society, that we've created something which is very representative of Mary. So we've used her autobiography to build up the knowledge base. And then we've verified our data sources and made sure that we've got Mary as accurate as possible. Next slide, please, Radek. And then obviously as I say, these issues around digital necromancy and whether people feel comfortable with this. And it effectively, the term just refers to bringing someone back who's no longer here. But actually, for characters from the past, it can be a real way of enhancing digital storytelling and passing on intangible stories from people who may no longer be with us. And we've found that children, in particular, engaging with these kind of characters have really enjoyed looking at this. So just a snapshot of some feedback that we got. So we presented it to groups of children who were visiting Liverpool, and we got quite a large variety of different questions and answers, some completely unrelated, but I think the majority of them were actually sort of the children were focusing in on the things that really sort of started to matter around the subject matter. And the communication and everything was as if Mary was a real person. So it was really quite interesting. We're currently looking into doing more studies around this as well. So what's next? So we think we can apply this same sort of framework to a number of different applications, particularly around historic figures and avatars. And we can sort of drop these into any environment as well. So we can allow them to be a guide, or we can allow them to be sort of positioned into any context to enhance virtual environments and learning through them. They're not limited to just talking to you either. We can make them talk to each other. So we could do a panel discussion, for example, and have a number of people from history and have them talk about their experiences and then join in with them if we wanted to. So we can do that. And we now support multiple languages, so we can speak to Mary in about 40 different languages at the moment. And the other things we're interested in is the non-verbal behavior side of things, which I think Tünde touched on before when she was saying about that's all part of the learning process. So the more realistic we can make the emotional content of the character as well, the more believable, the more you actually enjoy interacting with Mary. So even down to things like, how do you initiate conversations? Do you make eye contact? Do you press a button? Well, actually the eye contact and the right sort of non-verbal cues are probably the most natural way to do it. Next slide, please, Radek. That's everything. I hope we haven't gone over. Any questions, just let us know.
That's brilliant. Thank you for taking us on this journey with the virtual avatar. I think we've got time for one very quick question. Or if you wanted to pick anything up from the chat. Okay, so Clive is asking, how easy is it for students to create?
So at the moment, what we've done is we've created a framework so that we can sort of upload, we can create and add knowledge bases. So I think the way in which we've created it at the moment, it would probably be more for, I think, lecturers to create knowledge bases, and that could act as a sort of an additional learning resource. I think students could also do it, and I think we'll see more applications appearing on the market which will allow people to do those kind of things. But I think from a teaching point of view, it just gives you another. It's probably more powerful because it gives you another thing that you can actually allow people to use for learning.
And as you said, Simon, I think it might be an interesting project for students to create that customized database behind Mary SQL. They could research her life and the likely questions that might come up. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm aware that we need to move on. So if you can stop sharing your screen, and can I call on Gareth Ellis to talk about mind maps?
Okay, thank you very much. I have to say it's significantly less ambitious an idea than Simon and Reddit's labs, but hopefully it'll be useful. I'll share my screen. Just tell me if you can see that in the...
Yes, all good, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so the idea here, I was teaching into a course in the management school in semester 1, and at the start of the course we spoke to the students about what they felt they needed, and a lot of students explained that they felt excluded from group work because of a couple of things, either their language proficiency, maybe they had certain other kind of conditions which made them feel it was less comfortable for them to participate. And also the technical aspects, because we found that students were generally communicating through WhatsApp and trying to plan over WhatsApp. So we thought we'd try and think of a way that we could help them plan their projects in a more maybe visual way and a more collaborative way. So we decided to use AI to help them generate mind maps that they could then go on to edit together. Okay, so jump to the PowerPoint. Okay, so when we found that the challenges in the group work were task allocation amongst the group, and the division of labour was generally felt to be unfair. Participation wasn't really even, and the level of contribution from the members of the group weren't even. The communication especially was extremely unfocused, and that was the task that we really wanted to attack, really. There was very much a lack of a clear shared understanding of what they were trying to achieve and how they were going to achieve it, and we felt the mind map was a good way to approach this. So using mind map, we felt we could kind of bring a lot more visual clarity, which could appeal to a lot of different profiles of students, give a very structured but also flexible way for the groups to approach things, and use these kind of AI tools. We chose tools which were free. So we're using 2 tools. We're using ChatGPT, which is sufficiently free to perform this kind of task, and a website called MarkMap, which I will try and demonstrate shortly. And it will use these mind maps for a very visual representation and hopefully a very intuitive understanding of a group project. Okay, so the reading around this sort of suggested that breaking down these tasks would reduce cognitive load, which could be very useful for a variety of profiles of students. It will using sort of AI in education would help boost productivity, critical thinking, and give them the kind of organizational skills that they'll need in their careers. It will increase engagement, and we found the student feedback on this was it was an intuitive task method, and it was also very easy for them to adopt. In fact, there was inside the session when this was introduced to them, by the end of the session, they'd all developed usable mind maps. Okay. So the idea was help them develop their project management skills, increase their digital literacy, and introduce them to a couple of new AI tools, give them this kind of collaborative, communicative style and problem-solving abilities, help them try and improve their time management. A lot of students were finding the impending deadlines extremely stressful, and this was a way we could help to maybe reduce that, and support inclusion using this visual breakdown of the tasks, using this Markdown language. Markdown is a very basic kind of computer language, and we'll see how the AI is able to let them use that. So I would introduce the assessment brief to the students. We would work on customizing a prompt, which I'll show you shortly. We generate the mind map, generate the plan using the AI, generate the Markdown using AI. Then we visualize it using this MarkMap website. Once we have it, the students would then work on it together and edit it, because obviously the AI isn't going to give you the perfect kind of map of your project straight away. It's important that they sit down together, work on it together and refine it together. And then at the end of the session, we had the students present and reflect on the process and how it was an improvement over their previous strategy. Okay, I will stop sharing that and I will share my browser and I will show you how the process works. Okay, Tünde, can you just tell me, can you see ChatGPT?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
The sharing is not coming across yet, or mine anyway. Yep, something is coming.
Something's coming.
Zoom.
Yeah.
And now ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So the prompt basically said, so the prompt I gave them and I asked them to edit it. So it started off by giving it a role as a study skills assistant and consultant. Then the students gave information about who they were, where they were studying, the level they were studying, and the type of project that they wanted, that they had to complete. It gives them a list of things that it wants them to include in the markdown. So the key tasks, roles, they want a timeline, milestones, and deliverables. And then it asks ChatGPT, or I mean, you can use Gemini for this, you can use Claude to generate the plan in Markdown and make the Markdown format compatible with the creation of a mind map. So I'm just going to run the prompt now and we'll see how it works. So we can see ChatGPT starts to write the Markdown. I'll leave it to do that. And while it does, I'll just go to MarkMap and demonstrate that. So this is the MarkMap website. It's, again, completely free, completely open. If you hit try it out, it brings up the interface. So it looks a little complicated at first, but it's actually super, super simple. On the left-hand side, you have the MarkMap. And then the visual representation is built on the right-hand side. So this is like the demo, and you'll all see this if you use the website. I'm just going to delete the text, just select and delete it. We'll clear it out. And then if we go back to ChatGPT, we can see that it's finished doing the markdown. I can copy it. And then if I move over to MarkMap and paste the text in, it will build the mind map of the project for us. So we can see that it's developed a part of the mind map for the key tasks and the subtasks. We have roles and responsibilities. We have a timeline. We have milestones, and we have the deliverables. So this is everything we've asked for in the prompt. Okay. Now, what we'll need doing at this point is for the students to sit down, look at the mind map, and then edit it to suit their actual projects. It's going to have a lot of good ideas, but it's not going to be perfect right off the bat. So they can just go over here onto the left-hand side then, and in the editor, they can just edit the text directly. They don't have any programming requirements. They don't really need to know Markdown. They can just edit the text on the left-hand side and agree with each other on the content of their plan for the project. When they're done, they can download it as a HTML document. They can put it in. We're sort of suggesting they use Teams to house all of their project materials. And then it can be a reference for where they're up to on their project, which we feel was, and the students felt as well. After the session, we ran feedback, and they felt it was a much more effective way than them trying to negotiate it in WeChat or in WhatsApp and things like that. So yeah, we feel it's very visual. It's very easy to use. Students, if they needed to focus on something, they can just collapse down sections of the mind map and expand them as necessary. And yeah, we feel it's certainly an improvement on just trying to organize a project in text and a little more inclusive for certain profiles. Okay, thank you. I'll stop sharing.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Gareth. And I can see anything that helps group work and dynamics is very, very helpful. I also see lots of other scope for this, creating mind maps either for learning resources or from an inclusive perspective as well. Some students like to visualize things. So has anyone got any question?
Yeah, Gareth, can you hear me?
Yes, Clive.
Sorry, this is great, actually. I just want the actual initial development of the whole series of prompts, the requirements. Was that done through a group negotiation process in the first place?
It was, yeah. I gave them like the bare bones of the prompt with spaces for them to add in their own data, but I encouraged them to kind of rewrite the prompt to suit the parameters of the project and how each individual group was going to approach the task. But yeah, yep. So we did that. We got them all on ChatGPT as groups in the classroom, and they edited the prompts before generated the markdown. So hopefully that was going to mean a little less editing once it was actually in the mind map.
Okay, I'll talk to you more about that offline, Gareth, I think,
Okay.
because that's really good. I really like that. It's great.
Very quick on Gary as well. Were all the students able to access that mind map at the end all at the same time, or is that just one person's window and they can all kind of group round?
We did it with one person so they can kind of all negotiate it together. At the end of it, we encourage them to copy out the markdown because it doesn't really save it on the platform. But if you copy out the actual markdown, you can then go back and edit it further later on. And you also have this kind of a HTML file, which you can put in whatever repository they're using to house their project, and they can open that at any time and then refer back to it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I think there is, Emma, you were confirming if it's a visual representation of a project plan, but I think that, yeah, Gareth?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other question on that?
So yeah, I've got another question. So just a different content area completely, which is not project development procedures, but more just content. So let's say you wanted students as a group to produce a mind map on the problems and solutions in grammar teaching. That's the topic. So I mean, potentially what the students might just do is put in a prompt, first of all, hey, ChatGPT, what are the problems and solutions in grammar teaching? And it will produce something. That then kind of removes the need for any initial group negotiation process, because ChatGPT is giving the content answers right from the outset. So I just wondered how you would negotiate that kind of issue, because your project one is actually
very quickly, Gareth, sorry.
Yeah, okay, go on.
Okay, I think really clever. It just comes down to sort of trying to make sure the students are intrinsically motivated to do their own work, really, and hopefully giving them this kind of process could lead towards that. That's all I could say on that, I think.
I think my presentation is actually going to answer a little bit of that, Clive, as well.
Okay, then let's move.
Okay.
Thank you for segueing. So our third presenter, thank you very much, Gareth, and we move on to Liam. Thank you.
Yes, let me just share my screen. So everybody should be able to see that. Is that okay?
It's coming, yeah. Perfect.
Cool. Right. Okay. So I'm going to just start off very quickly. I feel like I need to say that not everybody working with GAI at the University of Liverpool is a bearded man with glasses. I've just noticed there's a running theme of presenters today on this group. And I have lost my second who was going to help me out on this, but this was just basically an introduction of a way that we put together a teaching method that worked really well with a group of students to kind of get them used to the limitations and opportunities that GAI offers when put in a specific scenario, like given a specific task. So with these guys, we decided to try to introduce GAI to first year accounting finance students to develop their professional skills. So first off, my name's Liam Kay. I'm the librarian for the management school at University of Liverpool. And my second, Chris Barlow, who is the lecturer for this module, is sadly not with us. So anything much more managerial information-wise, I won't know offhand. I just know how to find. But that's who we are. And we thought it was quite interesting to just see what Gen AI thought we both looked like based off our job descriptions and a very quick, brief, we're both men, whatever else. And it's oddly specific, even down to the point where I'm wearing the same jumper I've just realized as mine that it's given me. So anyway, it was just a bit of fun to get started. But we wanted to introduce GAI to the students like this because this module was very specific on empowering skills for new accountants to build them up. It's a very skills-based module, and it's been acknowledged in a lot of research recently that, especially in the accounting world, that Gen AI presents a really good opportunity to kind of readdress how the skills are going to function into this, and how important it is that students are being shown how and why to use them and when it's appropriate, and how to kind of translate that information to their future customer base at the same time. There's also a lot of assumptions that the students are already familiar with the technologies and know how to use them and how not to use them. And we're just not finding that's the case whenever we've taught to students, whenever we've introduced them before in other activities. So we wanted to introduce technology in a way that was very exploratory, that allowed them to figure it out for themselves without it being kind of prescribed. Like, you know, we didn't want to, there's a lot of following with it that, oh, here's Gen AI, don't use it for this, don't use it for this, here's where it's good, here's where it's bad. And, you know, we can tell them until the sun goes down, but we thought it might be more useful, since this is skills based, for them to actually just try it and see what happens with it. So it linked into the module because we needed them to be aware of commercial issues facing organizations and how to find that information. The way it's been described to me by Chris, I apologize, this was one of his slides, is that the students need to be able to understand where to go for information, to be able to then digest it and be able to produce it in a manner that's going to be useful to the client, whoever it is that they're working with. So with this, we wanted them to be able to develop the latest professional skill, well, another relevant skill required for them to be an accountant in the future, because this is going to play a large part, or we believe it will. So the structure that we decided to set up was a Kahoot quiz in a 2-hour session, a Kahoot quiz to start off, just to introduce them to what we mean by generative AI, you know, for anybody who hasn't come across it before. And that got quite good feedback, that they liked that, you know, it had been very outlined. This is what it is, because there's so much discussion and so much, you know, people don't know 100% what it is straight off the bat. We then had a group work tailored session where we provided them with a generative AI tool and a task to complete with that linked into the module, and then to present their ideas back and start a discussion at the end so that we could kind of talk through what they found. The task that we actually asked them to do was to create a poster presentation answering the question, what are your company's main sustainability initiatives and how impactful have they been to the business and society? So we broke the class down into a number of teams, gave each team a specific company to focus on, and gave each team a different generative AI tool that they could use. Usually it ended up being 4 teams, and we used ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and Perplexity, just to kind of get a broad range of easily accessible generative AI that they made an account on. Once they'd put their poster together using that generative AI, then they fed back to the class about the pros and cons of using the tool while they did it. The key part to this, though, is that we didn't give them much more than that. We just basically said, here's your company, here's your generative AI, answer that question, you've got 40 minutes, off you go. And then we wandered the room and we talked to them, and we tried to give as little direction as possible. We didn't say what it was good for, how they might use it, how they might not use it. And we wanted them to discover bit by bit what it could do and couldn't. So they were really motivated to have a play with it and just to start. And you could see them kind of picking up bits and going, oh, wow, it's really good for this. But hang on, it's giving me this fact and I have no idea where it's got it from. And there was very proud moments as a librarian walking around with it going, but I don't know how they fact check this. And I'm going, yes, I know, it's great, isn't it? But the fact that we'd given them the responsibility to feed back to their peers as well at the end of the session really drove them to put together the material in a good way. So we were expecting them to come out of it from that module. We wanted them to realize that GAI directly links into things like commercial awareness, information search and analysis, how it can help with their group work, and how it can help with their presentation and communication skills, which they all commented on in the discussion. It was really quite heartening to see that with very little direction, they immediately hit those in about 4 different sessions. We got the same things. It was really good. So the way we tried to measure whether or not it worked, we didn't like the idea of just analyzing what came out at the end. We wanted to see, you know, before and afters. So we initially said what we were going to do to the group, said, you know, you're going to be working with GAI. And then we did a confidence measure beforehand. So the average confidence measure before the sessions was 2.5 out of 5. And the average confidence afterwards was 4. With a total increase of 60% in confidence. We've also that's the best that we'd seen in most of these sessions, which was really good to see. Just a few examples of the posters that they came out with. So Gemini ones with sustainability of Microsoft, they did put a lot of their information down. They hand wrote a lot of this. They put the pros and cons of Gemini, the advanced capabilities, improves the accuracy to other Gen AI that they might have used, and it was versatile, but there was potential bias, ethical concerns in its use, and in the information it was putting out, and the dependency on data quality that they were seeing. Same again with Perplexity. They put a really good poster together on Starbucks. With Copilot, they were looking into Apple's initiatives. And oddly enough, ChatGPT, the only one that I didn't expect them to be using to create images was the one that they created images with. And it was exactly what I wanted to see, to kind of show them, you know, they put that through knowing full well that a lot of those are not words, although they may look like words. And it got them talking about, you know, how it actually generates the images, etc., etc. But it was just a really useful tool that could be implemented into almost any class. It's a structure that could be used with anything. It just needs to have a tailored task that links in with it. So if anybody else was to use this, all they'd have to do is give the introduction, and show them know that what's happening, and that they have a basic understanding of GAI before you start, like with the Kahoot. Split the class into groups and assign each one a GAI tool. Assign a task to all the teams that they must complete using that tool, and then kind of take a step back. Give each group feedback to the whole class at the end and have the discussion, proving their assessment of the GAI and open for questions and discussions. But then really importantly, at the end during the discussion, take the time to error control, because that was the only kind of big weakness was this, is that we're letting them off the leash to go and play, but then we wanted to rein them in at the end, so that we left time to draw them back in and say, you know, here's the university's take on how to use it, and here's the wording that we're going with. In this module, we would like to see you use it to do X, Y, and Z, but they then had a real experience that linked in with what we were telling them. So it was quite useful. But so I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for listening. Does anybody have any questions?
Perfect timing. Thank you very much, Liam. I think, Emma, I don't know if you wanted to ask your question on audio or chat, or shall I read it? I think Emma is asking if the tools require students to sign up, and did anyone raise concerns?
So yes, they did. As in, they were required to sign up, but none of them raised any concerns. We did say, if you do have any worries or anything, please use your university email address, because every student has a university email address as opposed to a personal one. And since it was group work, only one student from each of the groups was required to sign on for that particular task. So we didn't need to go much further. It wasn't mega impactful.
And I think Clive was asking if the AI apps generated infographics.
Only on a few of them. So again, we didn't tell them to do that or not do that. We said, use it however you want. So some groups used them to create the poster that they presented at the end. The vast majority didn't, because that's almost what I expected, though. I wanted them to try it, see how good it was when it came out. And most of the time, you know, they got very similar to the Coca-Cola one, where it was almost illegible, and then they'd go away and make their own. But that was a lot of what the feedback came back with when they discussed. They said, oh, I thought it'd be really good for images, and it is for some smaller images, but they found trying to put information onto a poster like that, it didn't always work. But it is.
So does Perplexity though? Does Perplexity actually generate the infographics as it stands there? Obviously, because that's great, but that's not that's not being used in Canva or anything like that.
No. So we did say about, like, you know, there are other tools that link into this, like Canva has the plugin, doesn't it, where it can generate certain images. But no, with Perplexity, I don't think Perplexity generated images. We didn't give each of them the capability to do that. That was partially part of what we wanted. I only wanted a few tools that could create images and some that couldn't, so that when they tried to use that tool to create an image and it said, oh, I can't do that, then they could feed that back and say, well, actually, this tool wasn't great for that, but it could be used in this other way as well. So I don't believe at the time Perplexity could. I don't know about now. These things change very quickly.
I think also there is a difference between creating the parts of the image by AI and then putting it together as a human to sort of organize and orchestrate them together.
Yes.
But I'm just conscious of time, and we want to give people a little bit of a break before coming back to the workshop. So thank you so much, Liam. And I loved your analogy of gender bias. So we hope to redress the gender bias in our next workshop. If people are staying with us and coming back at 11 o'clock. We will have a visual deep thinking and visual workshop in this stream. But oh yeah, I was going to post so we now have a little bit of a break. And if you come back at 11 o'clock to whichever stream you've chosen, we're going to stay here to talk about deep thinking with visual images. But yeah, thank you everybody so much. And thanks for our presenters. I think we can do a manual clap and an AI clap and a visual clap. All words are oyster. Thank you so much for attending and your presenters as well. See you at 11 for those who are staying.
Sorry, Tünde, can I ask a question? Yeah, well, I see you recording those. So you're on mute. I see you recording those sessions. Will the recording be shared with us afterwards? Because we can't attend all 3 sessions.
Yes, I think that's why we're doing it, because other people have asked. So we are recording all of them, and we will make them available via the Padlet that we will circulate after the event. Thanks for the question. Sorry, I missed your hand up before. Didn't
sorry. Thank you.
See you everybody at 11 back here.
Bye bye. Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Introduce ourselves again. I'm Tünde Varga-Atkins from University of Liverpool. Ron, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Run. I'm assistant professor from XJTLU Liverpool University in China.
Thank you, Ron. And Nataša?
Hello, everyone. Great to host this session and great to see everyone all being virtually. I'm based at Lancaster University at the Department of Educational Research.
Thank you, Nataša. And we're going to talk about deep thinking with images using generative AI and introducing an inquiry graphic method. And in terms of the session, we would like to take a participatory approach. We will get you working a little bit. We will present the approach and the key stages, and then talk a little bit about the use of generative AI in this process, the considerations, and then we will ask you to produce some of the images. If you are happy to do that, that would be great. And we will provide the Padlet with the resources after the session as well, so you can try things and look at things in more detail. Thank you. So Nataša, would you like to get us started, and we'll share the screen as well for you. Do you want me to do that?
Yes, of course. I mean, the first thing is, of course, we prepared a little breaking activities for us, and also we have links to 2 Padlets that Tünde you could place maybe in the chat, so people can already click on the Padlet links and follow what we're talking about. So the first activity is very brief, and we would like to ask you to think about or try to visualize a concept, which is a concrete concept. So if we say a scientist, what is the first image that comes to your mind? Can you share in the chat? So a scientist. So let's think about it. So what is a scientist like when you just close your eyes and think about this concrete concept, which is a scientist? What kind of image pops into your mind? White coat. Elaine is sharing. Yeah, this is interesting, Elaine, because we have done, I mean, I have done this kind of activity with my students for a long time in order to explore and examine our subconsciousness and what kind of images we consume over life. So that's why it's important to critically examine them. So yes, we have the clever man, someone who looks like Einstein. That's exactly what a lot of people report. Like some like like really messy big hair in a lab experimenting with, you know, maybe doing a chemistry experiment, but you know the lab is about to explode. Something like that. And my question to you is your image, is that a man or a woman? I think that's an interesting question as well. Yeah, because surrounded by books, either, but what was the first image? Like when you just imagined, what popped up first, like the very first image that came to your mind? Yes, that's an interesting one. Yeah, we see a lot of answers that it is a man. So I think you already can feel, you already can understand better why we're asking these questions, because we consume visual information throughout our life, and then that visual information shapes our subconscious mind and helps in forming our representations that, if they're left unpacked or you know, unquestioned and reflected on, they're deeply ingrained in the fabric of our mind, I would say. So this is why we wanted to share this little activity that you can also do with your teams and with your students if you are in a teaching position. Why this is useful, because then with your students you can discuss how it is much needed to address, you know, different types of visualizations, and especially in terms of stereotype, in terms of bias representations, and what we have been served by you know, all sorts of you know, media that operate with a wide range of visual information and visual representation. So that's something to start with, something to think about. And then of course, I see that David mentions, you know, now I'm thinking about early career female scientists, and I think that's great, because once we start thinking, we then shape that image or that idea closer to our own interest, to our own experience. But probably the very first response is coming from that whole field of visual media that we have consumed throughout our life, and what has been in a way offered to us to consume. So moving on, if we say now, let's imagine, or let's think about more of an abstract concept. So if we say something that is an abstract concept, for example, in educational psychology, let's say constructivism, what would be your image? Because this is an abstract concept. So if we say that, what would be your image for constructivism, for example? How would you imagine, how would you visualize one aspect of constructivism, constructivist interaction in education? So just some ideas, like what would you represent? What would you scaffold? Okay, Ronnie Bamber says scaffold. Thank you, Ronnie. Yeah, scaffold actually features quite I would say you know, often when we talk about constructivism. Jigsaw puzzle with pieces missing. I think, Tünde, you would relate, because you remember when we discussed and talked about constructivism, you had that idea of you know, working together, building pieces of a puzzle, humans and building blocks. Yes, that's all interesting. Guide on the side, not sage on the stage. That's great, because that's literally the environment, the classroom environment or teaching learning environment where we are focusing more on the students, peer-to-peer interaction. So that would be your representation. Right? I'm just looking at the chat as we're going through these activities. To these, that's really interesting. So yeah, so we can now reflect that our image representations, like our visualizations, vary, and although they may be similar, they will definitely vary to even if it's if images or our representations are very similar, they will vary in certain details. So that's very interesting. And then sharing our representations and the reasons behind our choices can be very useful to build that collective understanding of a concept. So let's say if we teach any concept and we would like our students to understand different concepts, then we can organize, like, let's imagine like a gallery of students' choices that then they can compare, analyze, compare and contrast, etc. So now we would like to introduce an inquiry graphics approach, or inquiry graphics. So Tünde, if you can just share that Padlet. So at the center of the Padlet, we have an activity that can it's basically it shows different ingredients of this pedagogical approach that can be used with students for reflection. And obviously we're now talking about images, and it's important to maybe just say briefly what inquiry graphics are. So inquiry graphics are multimodal artifacts for learning. So that's a very simple description. They are basically visual media combined with reflective and analytical narratives about concepts across disciplines. So if we put any type of visual medium, whether that's a photograph or generative AI created image, an illustration, a painting, you name it. It could be a video, kind of more multimodal, visually salient media, and a reflective and analytical narrative, whether that's through discussion or through a written narrative, then we have an inquiry graphic. So I hope that's clear. Questions are welcome in the chat. So what we're showing here, Tünde, and you can explore this Padlet. I think, Tünde, if we share, yeah, you have already shared, I can see that, the Padlet, so colleagues can click on the link and look at the Padlet and explore it. And the activity that is called IBCI, image-based concept inquiry, it just shows all different ingredients that many people will recognize align with Lorilat's conversational framework or ABC design for learning. You can see that there is a concept that we need to decide on, whether collaborative with students or it's teacher-led decision. Then students would create or find images, and in this case we are particularly reflecting on generative AI images or generative AI created images. So just a couple of illustrations here as well. When we think about how images and concepts relate, through the research, we concluded, I mean, when I say we, students, and I worked with students, so students and I, we were looking at different types of image concept pairings, so to speak. So we can see here different types of images that we could identify, and of course this is not an exhaustive list or typology. So we can talk about focusing on something in particular. So it's not to say that one image would not cross or would not actually fall under all these different types or categories. But what we wanted to present is that we can think about certain things such as, what kind of place or context we want to represent. Do we want to think about time or how the concept has evolved over time, so historical approach? Do we want to consider cultural, I would say, particularities about that concept, so show and represent something that is driven by cultural considerations? And then if we move to the left, we have, for example, things such as metaphor that I think is very, very popular, and this is something that everyone shared, their visual metaphors. For example, if we think about constructivism, scaffolding is probably the most commonly used metaphor. And then things such as the iconic is more kind of a stereotypical image of constructivism in this case. So these are concrete examples for constructivism. Here we can see children working on their own in a lab environment, experimenting with the together, and the teachers probably there as the guide on the side. We have also thought about challenging the concept. So how can we define something that challenges conceptual boundaries, and also contrast, so contrast that concept, so provide something that is a contrasting representation, such as the opposite of guide on the side in a way, so kind of doing presenting something very much instruction driven. And then we can think about our own experience, personal experiences about everyday activity and so on. So you're free to explore the Padlet, but we will now move on to the activity itself. Tünde, if you would like to present the activity that we have for everyone. And of course, the chat is open for all comments, questions about these ideas that we shared. Obviously, now you can imagine that using generative AI to create these multimodal artifacts, these inquiry graphics, opens up a whole new field of play, reflection, experimentation, thinking about how we can do that, what to reflect on, what to think about, which we would be commenting on later on. So yes, Tünde, over to you.
Yeah, so I think before we present the activity, one of the things we were going to just lead you through is our experiments with Run, producing some inquiry graphics on the concept of constructivism, and just a little bit about some of the considerations and experiences of this. So I don't know, Run, do you want to share some of your thoughts? And again, you can follow in our Padlet if you want. So I think, Run, you had a go with Dubao.
Yes, the issues I'm concerning is that the accessibility, even though we know there's a lot of tools available online worldwide, but the main issue here in China is that we have difficulties accessing to tools, especially those who require a Google account for login. So because the Google services are right now not directly accessible in China, so we have to find a way to find the optional or alternative tools available. And there are some tons of tools available in China. So I also put a list of these tools available. Those are fully hosted on Chinese services and designed for domestic market. Yes, thank you, Tünde. So I put the list under generative AI tools for your references. So if people are facing the same challenges like I do, there are Doubao, and there's Baidu, Wenxin Yige, and Tencent Cloud XJTLU. All these tools are available in China, but there are like two issues I also want to point out with these tools. One is that they have to, they require a login with the Chinese cell phone number for authentication. I know it's weird because people have the concerns of giving away their cell phone number, but this is quite a common practice for many Chinese-based apps and services, as they often use this cell phone number to verify the account security and user identification. And another thing with these tools that I listed is that they offer a limited free access to certain features. So you can use these text generation or basic image generation for free. But if you want to use advanced like options, they often come with a usage caps, like limited number of credits per day. So that's the things that you want to know before you want to use these tools.
And can I just jump in, Run, and ask you, you were searching for your images to represent constructivism, because we can see here your contribution via Doubao. What was your idea? What were you thinking about?
So I'm thinking about scaffolding, like helping students move from their comfortable zone to a level that they cannot reach unless someone is there to support them. So I input this idea into Doubao, but of course Doubao only allows Chinese. So I put a definition like this in English and translate into Chinese, put that into Doubao, and Doubao automatically generates several images. So I download all these images here, and as you can see that they are quite similar. Like there's people interacting with each other, and then the blocks kind of representing their knowledge construction process.
Yes, like a mix of a bit of a context, but it's a quite an imaginary context, so to speak, and then the the process of building blocks is probably metaphorically representing the scaffolding here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. What about you, Tünde? What about your images?
Yes, so I think my reflections from the exercise is that, I mean, you can see what my prompts was, and I think we had a really interesting discussion, because in my head I was trying to create an image that's sort of a metaphorical image of our brain, as we as individuals might be stretched by others and working things out and constructive bit by bit with the help of others build our own knowledge. So I was trying to display a mental landscape but through the building blocks, but I think it ended up being probably a more literal interpretation with the Lego constructions. But I think this image, if you can see, it's very interesting, because if you see my prompt was, and this is, I think one thing to watch out for when we're using the prompts is the differentiation between literal meaning and metaphorical meaning. Because when I said to build a bridge over a river or canal, I meant sort of an imaginary river or canal. But because I put that in my prompt, ChatGPT took it quite literally and gave me a real river there. So in that, recognizing that, I then try to make the point, can you give me an imaginary one? But then, so I think it's just interesting. And then I didn't like that it was very structured, because I think as we're building our knowledge, it can be quite messy and different steps, different sizes. So when I prompted it to be more messy, it actually made it more probably ordered. So I think it's just these tensions between the literal and the metaphorical, and how much we want to display with our prompts is very interesting. Then I tried another tool, Adobe Firefly, which is probably a little bit better in terms of more options for photographic images. I think it's different stylistics, and that was quite sort of a realistic image. And then interestingly, I did the same as Ron. I had a go, because as you can see, a lot of these images are quite uni aspect. I don't know how to say it properly. So focus in on one aspect, and a lot of the sort of human created images can tell a whole story where you can zoom in with different elements, each element having some sort of a meaning, whereas these ones were quite uni ones. But when I put in a definition of constructivism and asked ChatGPT to create a visual metaphor of that, it had a go with creating a more of an ensemble piece where different parts sort of probably have different meanings. So I don't know, Nataša, if you want to decipher, but I think that sort of scaffolding with the ladders, I mean, there is some sort of visual anomalies here as well, but this idea of cogs and I'm guessing active learning and realization with the images, and then also some active collaborative learning, which is something we associate with constructivism as well. I think this raising the level and moving on to a next level seems to be visually depicted as well quite well. I don't know, Nataša, do you want to add anything from
just very briefly? I think that's fascinating because Tünde, if you remember, we discussed all of the processes involved and also shared our reflection. And we're inviting all the colleagues to share, please share your reflection, your ideas and what you have done or what you would like to do with generative AI in relation to creating images. So I think what this shows us is that if we can have these very detailed, rich pictures, rich images, we can then, together with students, look at these little details and then think, okay, how we can use these details that are actually in the generated image for reflection. So, pieces of a puzzle coming together. So what does that mean in terms of understanding, constructivism better? So how do we bring together the image content and image content analysis, and then the resources that are usually text-based, kind of language text resources that we share with our students in order to get familiar and learn about different types of concepts, in this case constructivism. So that's what I wanted to reflect on, that having these rich detail-rich images, I think provides a great opportunity to unpack those details in the image and then use the details for concept related reflection. So that's one thing I just wanted to say.
I think,
really,
Nataša, just one thing to add, that I think a lot of I think I mentioned it at the beginning in the keynote discussion as well, that a lot of times AI or even our finding of whether it's AI generated or other images, but especially with the AI generation, as we saw from the earlier case studies, they might come up with mistakes or things that you didn't intend. Yes. But I think that's fine, because as you said, it's the reflection and what the student says about the piece that's important. Because if they come up and say, well, I don't know what this, I mean, this looks like a witch, for instance, I don't know what that is. No, but then it might generate some discussions if things are not the way they should be, or why, or perhaps when you then actually articulate what you think it could have been. And that's why the reflection piece is so important, that goes together with the image in terms of this analysis.
Exactly. And you mentioned an important aspect of it, which is critical analysis and critical thinking. That's definitely one of the goals of the activity, or of these types of designs for learning with visual media. So it is about asking critical questions. So how things are represented, what is shown, what is not shown, so what is omitted, what that means. Also, criticality in terms of, as you say, what generative AI can and cannot do, especially in terms of, these representations that it generates and offers. And also that can then connect to critical questions about, the concept itself, because when we put the two together, there is a really potent space for questioning and criticality. So definitely, having that critical acumen is so important.
Okay, so is it time for us to ask you to have a go with generating an image? So I think in the Padlet you see a range of AI tools. I mean, some might need registration, either an Apple or a Google email sign up. I think with Dolly, you probably okay just going to it, so you might want to use that. Or if you don't want to do, you could always put your prompt in the chat and maybe we could generate it for you, or someone else could. But the idea would be for you to have a go with generating an image on the concept of feedback. But if you want to continue with scientists or constructivism or anything, we don't mind. I think, but if when we say feedback again, what comes to mind? So what would be the image that you generate to represent one idea, or an example feedback, or an emotion related to feedback, or an instance of the concept of feedback? And then you can remember here back to the categories that we showed you here before. Do you want perhaps something that's an everyday experience, something iconic and contrasting, or a metaphorical representation of feedback, or perhaps something that has a cultural significance, and so on? So have a think of maybe some along those ideas, and then if you can add them to this Padlet. So if you just click on the and then you can copy and paste the image in if you can, or share your prompts. But that would be your task now. And I mean, maybe if I just show you, for instance, on Adobe Firefly, what it could be. So let's go with the scientist idea. So Nataša, you were talking about an opposite concept. So if we had a white man in a lab coat for a scientist, maybe I could do a girl, like a young girl, out on a field or something. I mean, it doesn't matter really, but with Adobe Firefly as well, there's quite a rich way of doing things. So a young girl on a field, I don't know, should we have her, I don't know, with a magnifying glass? So that would be my thematic representation for a surrounded flowers. And then I think with images, there's so many things we can prompt in terms of the style or the genre. Would we want a line art, a comic, an animation? So I think all those decisions can be quite important. And in Firefly as well, you can set the ratio of the image, the composition. You can even set up a reference image, and then it will offer you a number of options. You can also then sort of, refine your prompt on a later stage as well. So I think that's just quickly to demonstrate maybe how that could work. But if you come back here, and then if you have a go with a visual or a prompt for feedback, we would love to hear either your additions or what you might come up. Is that okay for people if I just put the Padlet link again here, or have I done that already?
Yes, so is everyone happy to have a goal and then share? Also, the chat is open for questions and comments, and also sharing what you are doing or what you are interested in when it comes to these types of activities, putting images and educational concepts together in the context of learning and learning inquiry. So yes, the chat is open. We would give you a little bit of time, to have a go. Tünde, how long would that be? Yeah, 5 minutes. Can I just see if you can unmute yourself? Did you say 5 minutes?
Sorry. Yeah, about 5 minutes. But if you just wanted to share your prompt as well in the chat, that's
yes, that would be great. So if you think about feedback, I know it takes a little bit of time to think, okay, what kind of image would that, because this is the challenge, because feedback is such a huge field. It's kind of feedback can be different types of feedback, different ways of giving or doing feedback. Five minutes. So can we just check with everyone if everyone's happy? Just a little bit of thumbs up, maybe, just so that we know where we stand. I know everyone is now thinking, reflecting.
Yeah, thank you, Liam.
Alison is having a
Can't wait to see them. I think we have got some examples to show you, but we'd rather don't preempt your ideas.
Yeah. And Tünde, as we said, you know, if you would rather think about the different one, constructivism, or the concrete one, scientist, you're very welcome to do that. You know what's a pity? We cannot make Zoom to play some background soothing music, you know, like smooth jazz or something, right? I don't know.
I think we've got Liam, thank you, has got one idea, learning from feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So if I share the Padlet.
Mm-hmm.
Liam, do you want to share your prompt, or what's your thinking on this one?
I basically said, you know, can you create an image of just learning from feedback? And it gave me that, but that was a bit random. So I kind of went a bit further and said, can you create an image of presenting feedback in a structure that supports learning from that feedback? And it literally did me a presentation. So I was like, it's not quite exactly what I was after. So I'll go with that first one.
I mean, it's interesting visually, the light bulb moment. The light bulb seems to be a visual association in terms of how AI generated. So there's some sort of recognition, realization, and then also in the way sort of the left, so that suggests electronic feedback that comes from the left of that sort of lights up the student. Shall we share maybe ours while people are working?
Yes.
Run,
Yes.
do you want to, so it's on our, in our examples on the Padlet, if you want to have a look at them. Run, do you want to maybe talk about yours?
Yeah, sure. Just to share the link to our Padlet for the examples that we've created. So basically for me, I talked about emotions and I asked this generative AI to generate an image on the emotions students may have when they receive feedback on their piece of work. So some students may be relieved, some students may feel anxious looking at the feedback, and some may feel like different, all types of feelings. So that's what I have as my prompt. And what generative AI lead to me are quite similar images as well, like students looking at their work with feedback on it, with different emotions on their face.
And yeah, this is really interesting, Ran. So if I can just, which palette do you want us to share on? Can you just, Tünde, just...
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter really because we can display both, but if you put
Yes.
your ideas here, the activity.
Yes.
So, oh yeah, Alison, do you want, so there's, sorry, Natasha, finished. I was jumping ahead.
That's
Finish your thought, and then we can come back to
Yeah,
Alice.
my thought was how you know, what struck me, you know, with Rand's images is that they were all in a very particular style and quite there were illustrations, so they were not photographs. So we can also think about this wide range of different types of images and what different generative AI can actually create and how they do it. So you know, this is more kind of Pixar style image, the first one, and then more of an illustration, kind of simple illustration for, I would say, directed almost more for children than students in higher education. So that's something interesting to consider, how different image representations can, you know, what they show and what they cannot show and what they do not show. So that's also worth reflecting on. Yeah.
And I think that's with creating the image as well. I think, Natasha, there's quite a lot of probably instruction or idea that goes along with that. So capture probably that aspect and the audience and the style of it seems to be quite important. Shall we go back to some of the examples? So we've got something from Alison. I don't know, Alison, do you want to talk any of that?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, when I first got some returns of images, every single one was a man. So I added the prompt for woman and got this. I mean, I can see the constructive elements here. You can see the steps and the blocks, but I don't know where the feedback is. I'm not quite sure what she's holding. Is that a feedback drawer? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, some oddities going on, but really interesting seeing how you can generate these images, and I also liked a particular approach, so I kind of clicked on that and that gave it a composition reference, I think it called, and then every image was very similar in how it looked, but it tweaked the colors and who was in it, and yeah, really fascinating. So thanks for the workshop. It's been really interesting so far. Thank you.
So what was your prompt, Alison?
It was constructivist learning and feedback on that learning, and then I added woman after that.
Okay.
So again, visually, the building blocks and the scaffolding seem to come up. Yeah, but yeah, great. Thank you. Graham? I don't know if you want to talk to it, or there's the
DALL-E 2, yeah.
Yeah, so there's quite a few elements: collaboration, self-reflection, and it would be interesting to see how then it's displayed in the elements of the image. So the collaboration, definitely, and yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, is that Graham or somebody else? Yeah.
Graham, it is Graham.
Okay, great. Do you want?
2 seconds. Yeah, I just can you see me all right? I just went to DALL-E 2 and gave it a prompt of show me an image that conveys good feedback within the ethos of constructivism, and it came back with that image, but I was quite impressed. It also gave me a little précis of its own thinking. So again, we've got building blocks. I did a previous version which I didn't submit, and somewhat unsurprisingly, there was an image of a teacher and a pupil. The teacher was an older male, and the pupil was a younger female. So I chose not to share that one with you for this purposes. I can do if you want. I don't know why it's come up as Frank, but anyway. So yeah, that's it really.
Thank you.
Yeah, just that's just out of the box with DALL-E 2 without having to tweak it too much. So it's quite fun to see what it comes up with.
Brilliant. And I think, again, as we started with the gender bias, and I think all those results are so interesting and worth a discussion as well, when we have these with our students. Okay. Any other ones? Optimistic Hornet. Yeah. don't know if you want. So again, I think you had a image of constructivism, and the cogs seem to come back as well as an image. Yeah, brilliant. I think maybe I'll just pick also one example that I had a play with. Oh yeah, brilliant. Is one of the 7 principles of effective feedback by Nicola McFarlane. One is about identifying next steps. So I think, Nataša, in the example categories that you showed, when we probably pick one aspect of the concept, can be quite useful, and using a sort of metaphorical representation. So here, the stepping stones, there's someone telling you where and how you can move on with feedback. I think I was trying to display that with this image, and it was just, I think I actually picked this from an AI library. So I think just for sustainability reasons as well, sometimes it can be quite helpful to look at what the library offers us to see if there's something there already. Although I think one challenge is that it's not usually keyworded. So it basically is a question of browsing rather than finding. But if anyone has come across an AI library, I would love to hear from you. And I'm sure there will be some available. So in this one, I think the sunshine, that seems to be a visual theme as well in these, where feedback sort of illuminates and shows the light to someone. So I think, again, that's something, a meaning that carries through from pictorially, that is quite interesting. So
yes, absolutely. And just to add to that, I mean, I see colleagues are adding images, which is quite interesting to see what kind of images the generative AI has offered or generated. Just one thing to mention in relation to these different details of the images and how to use them for reflection. So you just mentioned, I think, an interesting example of light and how that translates into reflection on whether feedback illuminates something. So I think this is the way of associative thinking that probably it's not much used with images and can be usefully actually applied in this type of activity. When we look at the ingredients or elements of the image and then think, oh, okay, I can see this light. So what kind of association that particular representation can have to understand better how we can talk about feedback, or what new ideas maybe we can come up around feedback. So I think you're connecting, your connection between the light and also we saw some pictures of light stemming or emanating from the laptop, and then connecting that with feedback as illumination, as probably elucidation of challenges and certain things. So elucidation, illumination, clarification. I think this is all helpful and a way to use the image, because as I mentioned earlier, images are usually underused when it comes to their content for reflection.
Thanks everyone with engaging with the activity. So I think we're just going to wrap up now. So hopefully we have shown you a tool to use in teaching. I don't know, Ron, do you want to?
Yes, thank you everyone for participating in this activity. I really hope that you engage and kind of reflect how different concepts, these abstract concepts, can be represented visually. And you do see people's understanding and their individual differences or emotions might different, and that can reflect on these different visual representations. But also we can find some commonalities in the representations. For example, when we're representing constructivism, we see a lot of building blocks or ladders. So those are the commonalities, and these can represent the key concepts here. So a lot of things going on here, and I really appreciate everyone's great efforts in participating in this activity. Yeah, Tünde and Nataša, do you want to add more things?
No, I think we have the chat open to everyone, and you know, we would be more than happy, all three of us, to hear from you, to you know, collaborate around these types of activities. I'm aware, I see you know, that there are colleagues that, you know, we already have some collaboration around this kind of activity, so we welcome ideas, you know, sharing, reflections, insights around it. So that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. I'm just left to say thank you, Run and Nataša as well. And be meeting back in the main meeting room in a minute just to wrap up the day. Thanks everyone for coming, and we will have the recordings and the Padlet Symposium Padlet circulated to all attendees, so you will have access to the other sessions as well in case you missed it. So thanks everyone, and see you in the main meeting room if you can come across to the last final steps. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. I just shared the main link to the Zoom meeting in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you.